In 1971, a tiny chip the size of your fingernail went on sale for less than 50 cents. Nobody cared. No headlines, no press conferences, no Silicon Valley hype. But that one forgotten piece of silicon is the reason you're watching this video right now. On a phone, on a laptop, on anything with a screen. And the four engineers who built it almost didn't get to finish the project. This is the story of the chip everyone forgot. Think about everything in your life that runs on a chip. Your phone, your car, your microwave, your watch, your headphones, the traffic lights you drove past this morning, the card reader you tapped at the coffee shop. All of it traces back to one product, the Intel 4004, released in November 1971. Before it, computers were refrigerator-sized machines that lived in locked rooms, run by men in lab coats. After it, computing became something you could hold, carry, and eventually forget you were even using. The wild part? The 4004 wasn't designed to change the world. It was designed to build a calculator. A Japanese calculator, for a company that was weeks away from going broke. In 1969, a small Japanese company called Busicom walked into Intel's offices with a problem. They wanted to build a new line of desktop calculators. 12 different models, each with its own custom chip. That's how calculators worked back then. Every function, every button, every display needed its own dedicated piece of hardware. 12 calculators meant 12 chip designs. Busicom's original plan required roughly a dozen custom chips per machine. Intel, at that point, was a 2-year-old startup with about 200 employees. They mostly made memory chips. They had never designed anything close to what Busicom was asking for. And the engineer assigned to the project, a young man named Ted Hoff, looked at the spec sheet and thought, "This is insane. There's no way we can build 12 custom chips. We don't have the staff, we don't have the time, we don't have the money." So Hoff did something radical. He asked a different question. What if, instead of 12 chips that each did one thing, we built one chip that could do anything? If you just told it what to do. A chip you could program. A general-purpose brain. Busicom said no. Twice. They wanted their custom chips. Hoff kept pushing. Eventually, Busicom agreed, mostly because Intel was cheaper than the alternative. The team that actually built the 4004 was tiny. Ted Hoff designed the architecture. Stan Mazor helped write the instruction set. Federico Faggin, an Italian engineer who joined Intel in April 1970, did the physical chip design, the part where you turn an idea into actual silicon. And Masatoshi Shima, sent over by Busicom, handled the logic verification. 4 people. That's it. 4 people built the first microprocessor, and they were behind schedule from day one. When Faggin showed up for his first day at Intel, he was told he had 6 months to deliver a working chip. The project was already 9 months late. The technology he needed to use, and something called silicon gate, had never been used for something this complex. He was basically being asked to invent a new kind of manufacturing and a new kind of computer at the same time. He worked 70 to 80-hour weeks. He drew the chip layout by hand on huge sheets of mylar with colored pencils. When the first prototypes came back from the fab, they didn't work. One layer of the chip had been left out by accident. He had to start over. By January 1971, he had a working chip. Intel had a microprocessor, and almost nobody inside the company thought it was a big deal. Here's the part that still blows my mind. Busicom owned the 4004. Not Intel. Busicom had paid $60,000 for exclusive rights to the chip. If Busicom had held on to those rights, the microprocessor might have stayed locked inside Japanese calculators for years. Maybe forever. But Busicom was in trouble. The calculator market was collapsing. Prices were falling faster than anyone expected. Busicom came back to Intel and asked for a discount on the chips they'd ordered. Intel's marketing manager, a man named Ed Gelbach, saw his opening. He said, sure, we'll give you a discount. But in exchange, we want the rights back. We want to sell this chip to other people." Busicom said yes, they needed the money. They thought they were trading away a calculator part. What they actually traded away was the future. Intel bought back the rights for $60,000. Within a decade, the microprocessor business was generating billions. Busicom itself went bankrupt in 1974. When Intel officially announced the 4004 in November 1971, the response was basically a shrug. Trade magazines covered it. A few engineers got excited. But the general public had no idea anything had happened. And honestly, inside Intel, a lot of people thought the whole microprocessor thing was a distraction from the memory business. Part of the problem was that the 4004 wasn't very powerful. It processed 4 bits at a time. It ran at 740 kilohertz. For comparison, the phone in your pocket is roughly 100,000 times faster. The 4004 could barely run a calculator, which, to be fair, was exactly what it was designed to do. But the idea behind it, that computing could be generic, programmable, cheap, and small, that idea was the earthquake. The 4004 led to the 8008. The 8008 led to the 8080. The 8080 powered the Altair 8800, the first hobbyist personal computer, the machine that got a college dropout named Bill Gates excited enough to start a company called Microsoft. A few years later, Intel's 8088 ended up inside the original IBM PC. Everything after that, onto the laptop, the smartphone, the smartwatch, the smart fridge, was the Sonic, is a descendant of that 50-cent chip. Here's what I think the real lesson of the 4004 is, and it's not the one you usually hear. Everyone tells this story as a celebration of innovation. 4 plucky engineers, impossible odds, world-changing invention. And sure, that's true. But the thing that actually made the modern world wasn't the invention. It was the deal. Busicom invented the microprocessor just as much as Intel did. They funded it, they specified it, they owned it. And they sold it back for pennies because they were trying to save a calculator business that was already dying. The 4004 changed the world because its original owner didn't understand what they had. That pattern repeats constantly in tech. Xerox PARC invented the graphical user interface and let Apple walk out with it. Kodak invented the digital camera and buried it to protect film. IBM let Microsoft keep the rights to DOS. The companies that shape the future are almost never the ones that invent it. They're the ones that notice what they're holding, and I'd argue we're living through the exact same moment right now with AI. Somebody, somewhere, is about to sell back the next 4004 for $60,000 because they're focused on the wrong business. The question is who? The modern world was built on a 50-cent chip that nobody wanted, designed by 4 engineers who almost missed their deadline, sold back to Intel by a calculator company that went broke anyway. If you like stories about the tech we forgot, hit subscribe. Next week, I'm breaking down the browser war that shaped the entire internet, and almost nobody remembers who actually won it.